Welcome to the ExecMBA podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Samantha Karp. Samantha is a student in our part-time MBA class of 2026, and she and I recently connected to talk more about her background, how she decided to pursue an MBA, what led her to Darden's part-time MBA program, her experience in the program so far, and more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. And as always, if this interview is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to the ExecMBA podcast so you never miss an update. And remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. And now, without further ado, here's my interview with Samantha Karp. Samantha, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Brett.
Well, thank you for being here. How's everything going? How are you doing?
Things are going well. Been watching a lot of the Olympics this summer, and so that has been fun as we head into August.
I know, it kind of makes you wish it was more frequent than once every 4 years, but I can take what we can get here.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to come on the podcast to share your story with our listeners. We always ask the same first question, so tell us a little bit more about you and your background.
Absolutely. So I am actually a UVA undergrad and while I was there, majored in psychology and women, gender, and sexuality with a minor in bioethics. So it was really all over the place in terms of my academic interests, but just kind of followed things that I loved throughout undergrad and loved my time in Charlottesville. And then after graduation, joined the Virginia College Advising Corps, which is a nonprofit organization actually started at UVA that pairs recent grads with into high schools that have a high need for college access and college preparation. Did that right after graduating to do some college counseling at a high school right outside of DC. Absolutely loved that and continued that for a year after the program. Once I had done that for a few years, decided that kind of wanted something different and made my way into education technology. So kind of bridging what I had done as a college counselor, but pivoting that into a little bit of a different role. And so worked at a startup in the edtech space for about 6 years. And then recently, about 6 weeks ago, started a new job at the Common App doing product strategy. So that's a little bit about me and my background.
I always have people on the podcast just to learn about the updates in their life. I did not know about your new job. That's so exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, I want to go back a little bit in your story. What was it like being a high school, college advisor, doing that work?
It was amazing. Just meeting all of these students who, a lot of them were first generation in their families to pursue college, and just working with them to figure out what college options were available and helping them through the very complicated college process was a lot of fun. I was very lucky with the people that I worked with, especially right out of college. They were incredibly supportive of trying to get new things off the ground and really dedicated to the mission and to college access in general. So working with the students was absolutely a highlight. I think especially coming from a place like UVA, which, and in Virginia in general, there's so many education options. And so helping students kind of realize their paths, no matter what that looked like, was really meaningful. And it was a great first job out of college.
Yeah, how did you make the decision to then move into education technology? What attracted you to that opportunity?
Yeah, so I kind of got to the point where I was looking for something a bit different in my career. Realized that as much as I loved working with students, there wasn't a lot of career progression or growth that was available in that field, and was looking for something where I could really feel like I could make an impact, and there was a lot of room for innovation and growth, kind of within the space, but then also for me professionally. And so I didn't really set out to go into ed tech, but kind of found that opportunity. It was a really nice blend between what I had been doing. I still felt like I had an impact, still could use all of my knowledge in terms of higher ed access, and then just kind of go to a field that was constantly innovating and trying different things and new things. And so it was really kind of a happy coincidence that I made my way in there.
It's interesting to think about your new role, product strategy for the Common Application. So this is the application. I assume this is the application that you fill out if you apply to multiple undergraduate schools at the same time.
Yes, absolutely. That is the Common App.
All right. Well, that's exciting. 6 weeks in, I know it's early days, but obviously you feel like this is allowing you to use some of the skills that you've been developing here at Darden in the part-time program.
Yes, definitely. I think that it's a really exciting time to be at Common App. The application just launched for the new cycle actually yesterday, so getting to be a part of that. And particularly kind of pivoting to more of the product strategy side. In my previous role, I was more kind of on the product management side, and this role, my new role allows me to kind of look at it from a more strategic side, which is really exciting. I think having recently just taken the strategy class as part of the core has given me some good frameworks to work with. And I think also working for an organization that is really supportive of pursuing education at any level. All of my colleagues are asking me kind of what I've learned and how I can apply it. It has made for a really great way to bring what I'm learning in the classroom into the work that I'm doing every day.
Yeah, we get this question all the time from prospective students about part-time MBA students. Do they make career changes while they're in the program? And the answer is absolutely yes. Our first class of part-time MBA students, part-time MBA class of 2025, I want to say maybe a quarter or so of those students actually had some kind of career change while they were just kind of navigating the first year of the program. So, which, I think it's a testament to the program. It's also a testament to the students once they get in here, sort of things that they get interested in and sort of thinking about how they want to continue to grow or advance their career. I'm not surprised to hear about it, but it's always great to hear individual anecdotes and stories.
Yeah, I think for me, especially being in the part-time program, I really wanted to figure out like, okay, is product really the place that I want to be once I graduate from Darden? And so switching jobs really allowed me to see that from another angle and get a different perspective. And so that when I graduate in a few years, I'll be able to kind of better assess what I want to do. And so for me, that change made a lot of sense.
Well, curious about your journey to Darden. Was an MBA something that you'd always thought about?
It was not. A few years after I graduated, it kind of started to enter my mind, but I was very hesitant to go back to school. I wasn't sure if I, had the capacity for it or was ready. But I knew that if I did go back to school, that I wanted it to be something that was really applicable to a broad range of fields. My undergrad background was very varied and not necessarily applicable to one field. And so an MBA kind of entered my mind as a good option to be able to leverage no matter what career I went into. And so that was the starting point of the path of me starting to think about an MBA and what that could look like. And then took a few years and thought about, okay, when is the right time for me to do this? And incorporating that into my life. And so I kind of knew that if I went back to grad school, it would probably be an MBA. Just took me a bit to finally take that leap.
How did you figure out the timing? Because I know this is something that's on our listeners' minds. I mean, there's no perfect time to do a working professional MBA or an MBA for that matter. Maybe there's windows of opportunity, but how did you figure out the timing?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. For me, one, it was, I think, trying to figure out, okay, how can I balance this with other things that are happening in my life? And to me, I also kind of got to this point where I was like, if I don't do it now, I think the chances of me ever going back to school are very diminished. And I think that looks different for everyone. But for me, knowing kind of where I am in my life, I got married last year. And so knowing that kind of where I was at the time, I was like, if I don't do this now, I don't think I'm ever going to have the time that I do now to go back. And so just looking at other things that I wanted in my life, decided that if I was going to do it, now is the time. And so really entered into that process, building in like the other major milestones in my life. And so submitted the application, kind of knowing that in the spring I was getting married and didn't want the application process to overlap with the planning process and wanted that part to kind of be done with before I entered the MBA program. And there's a lot of people in my program who get married and have big life events. And so it's definitely doable. But for me, I think it was helpful for me to feel more confident going into the program of like, okay, I don't have other things that I need to worry about in terms of time management.
How did you settle on a part-time MBA program? Did you consider maybe doing a full-time MBA program? Were you thinking about other options? Why part-time MBA?
I pretty much only considered the part-time MBA. I knew that I didn't really want to move or quit my job, which is funny now that I'm in a different job than when I started the MBA. But I think that for me, I wanted to stay in the Northern Virginia area, and so for that reason, kind of excluded a lot of full-time programs, and then wanted to kind of keep growing in my career. I think especially being in the tech industry that's constantly evolving, and not having like a direct path of, okay, this is the job or the company that I want to work for post MBA. I felt like the part-time MBA would give me that flexibility to make changes in my career as I wanted to do that, and kind of lessen the pressure a bit of that job search because I'd be still working while I was pursuing the MBA. And so that gave me that flexibility and really only considered part-time programs because of that.
Yeah, we hear similar things from other students. They like what they're doing. They feel like they have some momentum. They don't feel like 2 years off would make sense for them for a variety of reasons, maybe personally, professionally. And so part-time MBA becomes a good fit. What about Darden's program in particular? What was attractive to you?
Yeah, so I think being a UVA grad, I had always heard about Darden, and I heard about the amazing reputation that they had and the student experience, and how students just loved being at Darden. And so when Darden announced that they were having a part-time program come to DC, it was really like the stars aligned, and it felt like a great way to meet my goal of getting an MBA, have the Darden name, and use that Darden network that I had heard so much about. And so Darden was really it for me.
All right, so you come to Darden. You're a first-year student. You're still navigating the core curriculum at this point. I will say you're in the part-time MBA class of 2026. So what's it been like to be working and doing school at the same time?
It's been, I mean, the program itself has been great. Obviously, there are challenges that come with working full time and also being in school. But I think overall, it has far surpassed my expectations of what that would feel like. I think the experience of being able to kind of use my brain in a different way in the classroom that I do in my job on an everyday basis, being able to learn about different things. As I said, I have no kind of formal business background academically. And so being able to learn about all of these new subjects has been great. And I think for me, it's been kind of like a boost of confidence of like, okay, I'm doing both and I'm managing everything that comes with being a part-time student and somebody who's working full-time, and just being able, like almost a year in, to look back on everything that I've done has been really fulfilling.
It's interesting to hear you speak to time management, and that being something, obviously that has some complexity to it for any working professional student. What has been your approach to managing your schoolwork with everything else going on in your life?
Yeah, so I think I kind of have very like specific days that I focus on schoolwork. I am very lucky that my learning team is incredible, and we meet pretty consistently before every class, and that really kind of helps me set my time in terms of preparing for class. And so we meet Sunday nights before class on Mondays, which typically means that kind of Sundays for me are more devoted to classwork. And then we meet Wednesdays before our Thursday class. And so I typically try to get all of the reading and casework done on Tuesdays. And so for me, being able to kind of have those days where I have class and knowing kind of how the other days fit in has been really helpful. And then that also gives me the flexibility of, knowing that for the most part, Saturdays are pretty open, and Friday nights as well. And so that kind of structure has been really helpful in allowing me to know kind of like when my focus times are for school.
And I want to stick with this topic just for a little bit longer, because I think it's helpful for listeners to hear how you're navigating the program and found a schedule that worked for you and you're working with your learning team. How much do you typically have to prepare for, say, a Monday or a Thursday class sessions?
Yeah. So there will be two cases for every class. And so we have two different classes happening at the same time, one on Monday and one on Thursday. And typically there's kind of one more quantitative class and there's one more qualitative class, which is helpful to kind of be able to break those down a little bit and not have too much quant heavy work happening at the same time. So it kind of depends on the cases and how long they are. But between those two cases, depending on the class as well, I think for me, I probably spend more time on the quantitative classes and getting ready for those. But a few hours for every case is typically what I spend.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, a couple points that you mentioned there that I think are important for people to be aware of. Not all classes are created equally. So people always ask us about average hours per week devoted to the program. And one thing I always share with folks is there are going to be some quarters that are going to be easier for you, and there are going to be some quarters that are going to be harder for you just by virtue of the classes that pop up in those quarters. Samantha is in the core curriculum of the program still. So the first 18 months of the part-time MBA, you're not picking your classes. The classes are the Darden core curriculum. There are a couple of opportunities for electives as you go along, but by and large, you're taking a curriculum that is set for you. And so some quarters will be harder, and you're going to get new classes every couple of months. And so that's another thing that's kind of nice about the program is that, you every 7 or 8 weeks, you get new classes and, new cases, new things to think about. It helps keep things fresh. It also helps give you a sense of momentum. You don't have a lot of downtime to kind of think about the next thing and the next thing after that.
Exactly. I think the 7-week kind of term for classes really helps, because even if it's not a subject that you're the biggest fan of, it's less than 2 months and then you can kind of move on. And also having two different classes happening at the same time, by and large, kind of allows you to look at different subjects in very quick succession. And so, yeah, absolutely echo your sentiments. It's really dependent on the particular class and what the cases look like there. But I think especially, I think Darden does a great job of balancing the more quantitative classes with qualitative classes and having that balance out. And I will say, I think one of the kind of greatest surprises for me was that a lot of the work is just doing the case readings and then preparing questions. And so really knowing that by and large, that's been kind of the expectation throughout all of the quarters has helped me kind of level set in terms of what that looked like. and what that kind of level looks like. So I think as people work their way through the core, you figure out a schedule that works for you depending on the classes that you're taking at the time.
Couple more questions for you, Samantha, just to kind of help people understand the program experience and this academic end of things. So in the program, you have alternating weeks in terms of, 1 week, Monday and Thursday, and the core would be in person. The week after that, Monday and Thursday would be online. Week after that, Monday and Thursday in person. Next week online, et cetera. So you end up with 4 weeks where those classes are in person, 3 weeks where those classes are online. This is how you get to the kind of 60-40 in-person to virtual breakdown for the program. How are the in-person weeks different than the virtual weeks? Do you manage your time any differently depending upon whether you're going to be in person or online for a class session?
For my pre-class prep work, I don't. As I said, kind of stick to that same schedule by and large with my learning team, Sundays and Wednesdays, no matter whether we're in person or virtual. I think the weeks that we're in person, I try to go early to class to have dinner with my classmates before class starts, which is really nice to be able to connect with people and have some time before class starts just to talk about what's going on in our lives, especially with a class of about 70 people. You kind of get to know everyone, which is really nice. And so for me, dinner gives me that opportunity to kind of connect with people. And so having that in-person time is great. I think, it's a great way to connect with people you're seeing and you're honestly spending a lot of time with in person. And typically after our Thursday classes, we'll try to do something social after class with the entire cohort or people that are available. And so that in-person time is really nice. For virtual weeks, pretty much the same timing. I think they're having that flexibility of virtual does make it easy to kind of plan other things. So there have been times where I've traveled and taken classes from wherever I'm traveling. And so that flexibility has been really nice to be able to know, okay, I have that time where I can, potentially leave on a Thursday and take class from there. I took class from Montreal a few weeks ago. And so being able to have that flexibility and other things that you're doing makes those virtual weeks really nice.
Yeah, I appreciate your saying that. We've got a lot of questions when we announced the structure of the program. I don't get these questions so much anymore, but certainly in that first year where we were recruiting the first class of part-time MBA students, we got a lot of questions about this hybrid structure and why the online portion. And we said, well, to give students flexibility, we thought 100% in person would be just way too rigid. People have to travel for work. Maybe they want to take a vacation at some point. You're trying to think about how to manage all of this while you're in a program that can be anywhere from 28 to 48 months. The standard pacing's, a little less than 3 years. So having that flexibility is important. And so that's why it was built with this kind of in-person virtual cadence, just to give students flexibility. And if they needed to be out of the area for work or personal travel, they could potentially try to align that around a virtual week and not miss class. And so it seems to work pretty well thus far. The feedback from students has been good along the kind of lines that you've shared, that it does give people flexibility. So that hypothesis checks out.
Yes, absolutely. I think, and that's what I've heard from people as well. I personally don't have to travel a lot for work, but I know some of my classmates do. And so being able to have that flexibility is really nice.
So I want to talk a little bit about your experience in the program thus far. I mean, you're effectively, 6 quarters in at this point, about a year into the program. Can you remember back when you were starting to where you are now? How do you feel like you've grown in this period of time?
Yeah, I will say when I came to the program, I was really nervous. I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't know what the impact would be on my life. I think, I was somebody that worked very hard in undergrad and was kind of worried of what that looked like with my life now, knowing that I couldn't probably do the same things that I did in undergrad in terms of staying up really late and studying all the time. And so was wondering what that would look like now. And now being almost a year in, I can say like, okay, I feel like I found a good balance. I feel like I have been able to like manage my time well. And I also feel like I've learned a lot. I didn't really know kind of what classes would be like in business school, and was nervous about what that looked like not having a business background. But I think for me, the case method has been great for that. I think it introduces concepts, even if you don't have background in them, and it makes them really tangible. And so for me, I think I feel like much more confident in my ability to navigate through the program. I'm really excited about what I'm learning. And I think overall, it's just been a great way to meet a lot of new people, to tap into the Darden network, and really just learn a lot of things that I wasn't previously aware of.
Yeah. For people who are wondering, our students really oftentimes will not have background in things like accounting, finance, decision analysis, economics, marketing, operation. I mean, the list is quite, it can be quite long. We don't have an expectation that students have taken any particular classes or have any particular type of academic background outside of having a bachelor's degree. And I mean, so, there's lots of people who can be successful here. There's lots of people who can do this program. But it's not uncommon for people to say, I'm learning about a lot of things I just did not know much about before I came to Darden. And that's exactly why they're here. Though that's the important thing to remember, right? Everybody's here because they feel like they have gaps, things that they want to address, ways that they want to grow and develop. But that can be hard to remember, though, when you're in one of those classes and you're like, I'm not sure any of this is making sense. Gosh, accounting is really hard, or finance is really hard, whatever the case may be.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, I was definitely in that group of not having any accounting or finance background at all. I'll say finance is probably one of the classes I've done the best in. And so that was a really kind of happy surprise for me. I think, there are people with those backgrounds professionally, and they're able to add a lot to the class, and a good resource if you need additional help. But I never felt like I was behind or was at a disadvantage because of my academic background. I felt like we were all on the same page, and the professors really made it easy that if you read the cases, and you kept up with the coursework, you were absolutely able to succeed in the class.
I try to remind people what the focus is in these classes. It's not to make you a CFA or a CPA. The goal is to kind of give you a managerial perspective on how do you use these tools, this information, to ultimately make a decision, to have a perspective on a problem that a business is trying to solve, or an opportunity they're trying to evaluate. It's always from this managerial lens, because I guess the idea, sort of fast forward in your career, you're not going to be the accountant on the team. There's going to be an accountant there. There's going to be a finance person, and you're going to listen to them, ask good questions, ultimately be able to use that information. But it's not designed to make you a CPA or CFA.
Exactly. And I will say, like, I think the professors absolutely echo that. They really make that clear up front in the class. And so hearing it from the time that I was kind of looking at Darden through all of my core classes, I think that focus is really important, because especially in things like accounting and finance, it can be really easy to get lost in the details. And so being able to step back and being like, okay, this can equip me in the future. I don't need to necessarily remember all of these technical details, but knowing that I have the frameworks to be able to use when I'm working with accountants or other people that are more specialized in these fields going forward.
So, Samantha, what do you feel like the impact of your Darden experience has been for you thus far?
So I think for me, it has been a great moment of self-reflection. First of all, I think, I've talked a little bit about my concerns coming into the program and what that looked like. I think I have learned so much in the last year. I think that is one of the great things about the core, is that it really introduces you to a broad range of subjects, and gives you the lens to think about different business problems and cases that real businesses have gone through. All of the cases are about real businesses. And one of my favorite parts is when professors kind of give you what happened after the case ended. And so that has been really exciting for me personally. And I think professionally, now transitioning into another job, it has given me a lot of frameworks to use and things to consider while in my new position. And, thinking towards the future, being able to talk to Darden alumni about their paths and the careers that they've pursued after graduation. I think that there's a lot of opportunities in the program. We've talked a lot about what the, classroom experience looks like, but there's a lot of opportunities in the program to meet alumni and to meet people from different cohorts. And I think having that connection with people is really special. And that is something that will last well beyond the program end.
Yeah, I appreciate your point about networking. That's such a big part of the career process for any Darden student, whether you're full-time MBA, part-time MBA, executive MBA. What were those conversations like? Was that some of the work that you were doing that led you to your new role, or is it just more informational networking that you've been doing? Tell us about that.
For me, it's been probably more informational. The career services team was really helpful in my search. I had met with them pretty early on, knowing that I did want to switch jobs in the program. And so they were helpful in connecting me with people who were also in the ed tech space and getting their perspectives about what that looked like. So I think that was really helpful. I did not find my current job through a Darden connection, but I know that's always an option. And I think I've talked to a lot of people who are currently pursuing their MBA, as well as Darden alumni, and they're always willing to help, always willing to make a connection if needed. And so that part has been great in knowing that, okay, when I graduate, that network will always be there.
Well, a couple more questions for you, Samantha. I know it's still early days. You've got ways to go. You still got to finish the core, then get to electives. But do you have a favorite memory from the program so far?
I think there are two that stand out. One is the ski weekend. And so this was kind of a not formally organized, but just social thing that a bunch of students came together and decided that we wanted to do a ski weekend trip. This was a great opportunity to meet people from the cohort above me. And so being able to meet people that I hadn't spent a lot of time with, and get to know their partners and their backgrounds while relaxing at Snowshoe was a ton of fun, and something that we're hoping to continue in the future. So I think that has been something that has stood out to me. I will say, as I mentioned before, I feel incredibly lucky with my learning team. And I think from really the start of the residency in Charlottesville, we came together really well. We decided that this was the schedule that we were going to have throughout the core. And in addition to kind of coming together twice a week, in addition to the 2 days a week we spend in class, we've also done things like trivia and pickleball. And so having that group of people that I know I can rely on has been really special for me throughout Darden.
One, I didn't know about the ski weekend. Great to hear that people. I know that there's all kinds of social activities that are planned. We've got a part-time MBA student association that plans some of those things that students can join. You can pay dues and do all those activities. And there's also activities that they do that are for non-dues paying students as well. But great to hear students are also planning other things in addition to that. And learning team that plays pickleball together. I think that learning team is probably going to go places.
I think so. And I'm glad that you mentioned the Part-Time Students Association. I have also joined that as the VP for academics, and that has also been a great way to kind of get further involved and make an impact on the class going forward.
What does that role look like what does VP for academics entail?
So I think one of the great things about the program being relatively new is that we kind of get to shape what that looks like. And so for me, one of the main things that I've focused on is helping people exams. And so I'll typically host a review session before exams, and people can come in with questions. Sometimes we have the professors able to join, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we bring in somebody from the class above us who felt comfortable with the subject matter to talk through it. But just organizing those sessions to make people feel more prepared for the exams and any questions that they didn't get to cover in class. So that's one piece that I focused on. And then the second is electives. I know that especially coming out of core, there's a lot of questions about what electives look like and timing and things like that. And so working with the program team to make sure that we're communicating early and often about electives. And so people can plan their schedules. So those have been really the two things that I focused on.
Yeah, well, always a lot of interest in electives. I will say we've got questions for prospective students before we ever had students in the program about electives, and it continues to be a popular topic. It's been great to be able to share more about this into the experience now that our first class of part-time MBA students are fully in their second, third-ish year into the program. They are taking electives, and they are taking electives with their part-time MBA classmates. Some of them are taking executive MBA electives. We've had people join for executive MBA global residency. That happened. There were some students that went to South Korea with our executive MBA students. Some people who've done J-term electives. So it's been really cool to see part-time MBA students when they get into this part of the program. And your class will be there in just a few months.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
All right, Samantha, last question. What's a piece of advice you would share with our prospective student listeners?
I think that's a great question. So I think my biggest piece of advice would be to really think about how an MBA would impact your life while you're in the program. I think we've talked a lot about my decision-making process kind of before I entered the program. I think talking to the people that will be your support system is really key and essential before making that decision to pursue something that, quite honestly, is a big time commitment. And so really having that support, I think it takes a village, whether that's roommates or partners or family, friends, just knowing that you have the supportive people around you, and that they know that there are probably some trade-offs that you'll have to make. For me, it was really key. And looking back, before I went to R1, my mom said, you're not doing this alone. There is a village to support you, and just relying on that. I think for prospective students, no, you can do this. This is something that's achievable. It's something that's doable. But relying on the people around you and knowing that you don't have to do it alone is really key.
I love that advice. We always stress with prospective students, bring people into this process as you're doing your research, as you're beginning even to think about pursuing an MBA. Talk with people at work about it. Talk to your boss about it. Talk to people at home about it. Just to socialize this, because for you to be successful in a working professional program, you're going to need everybody's support. You're going to need support at home, at work, life generally. So
Yes.
Being inclusive in that way, bringing them into the process, letting them know how your applications are coming along. Once you get some good news and you've been admitted, where you're going, like all these kinds of things. The more inclusive you can be as you navigate all of this, better off you'll be.
Absolutely. Love that advice.
All right. Well, Samantha, thank you so much for taking some time to come on the podcast. It's great catching up with you. And I'm sure I'll see you around Sam's Family Grounds here in the next week or so.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks, Brett, for having me.
And that was my interview with Samantha Karp, a student in our part-time MBA class of 2026. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at exec, that's ExecMBA@darden.virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.